Hey everybody, what is going on? It's PMOC at 86 Drive. I wanted to come back to our latest and greatest topic, which is the 2022 Subaru BRZ. I wanted to go over a few things that apparently I missed during the premiere event of the new car. So these features that I had talked about but had questioned whether or not they were actually functional. The front intakes in the bumper, the side vents in the fenders, and the side sill spoiler is what they're calling it. And also that weird looking fin thing on the back wheel arch. Apparently, according to the press release, all of these have aerodynamic functions. The front vents draw in the air into the engine compartment. The side vents in the fender reduce drag and duct the air out from under the hood and the fenders. Some of that air gets redirected by the side sill spoiler, and that helps create downforce at speed. And then those small fins at the back of the rear wheel arch assist in airflow, adding stability at speed. So they're all functional, and that's great to hear. One thing I hadn't noted before when I was looking at the design, but I probably should have, was the lower grille design on the front end is improved. And one of the things that is different from the previous generation is they've now somehow managed to find a way to get rid of the mouthguard piece, as we like to call it on the previous generation BRZs, that sort of ugly looking piece of black plastic that sat at the upper end of the front grille is no longer there. They've somehow found a way to eliminate that. And so that's kind of a welcome change. Turning to the chassis, I know that there has been some confusion about whether the new 2022 BRZ is on an all-new platform, or are they using what they're calling the global platform for other Subaru cars. And from looking at the press release, it looks like the answer is that they are still using the same chassis from the previous generation BRZ. What they're saying in the press release is using design elements from the Subaru global platform. They've added chassis reinforcements in order to improve rigidity, but as far as I can tell, that's just all colorful language for saying that they're actually reusing the same chassis from before, but they've brought over some of the ideas, some of the ways that they've improved rigidity and performance in the global platform. They've brought those ideas over to the existing chassis. That's the way I read their press release. In terms of other chassis changes, it looks like they have lengthened the chassis by about an inch, a little bit over an inch, and also claim that the chassis sits about a half inch lower. Combined with the fact that they're using more aluminum in the body, they're saying that they're now using aluminum panels for the roof and the fenders, as well as the hood. So I think that all of these things contribute to what they're saying is a overall lower center of gravity for the new BRZ compared to the previous generation. One detail that I missed that I think one of the viewers commented on was that navigation doesn't seem to be included with the new BRZ. So maybe I misread that. I think what you can get from their press release is that the multimedia system that comes with the car includes Apple CarPlay and Android Auto integration with your mobile phone. So what you can do with that is, of course, link it to your phone and then be able to use your phone to drive things like music and navigation. And So that's what they were alluding to when they said that the multimedia screen can be used for navigation. When we were looking at the digital instrument display, one of the things I had commented on about was the fact that the previous model, the 2017 to 2020 models, had a neat little display on it that would show the power and torque curves of the engine on the display. And I thought that was kind of a neat thing, and I was wondering whether or not they would include that in the new model. And although they didn't show it in their initial press release photos, I did manage to find a glimpse of that same graph carried over for the new car in one of the other media reviews that I was able to find on YouTube. So I took a screen grab of that shot, and I'll share that here with you so you can see what it looks like. Is a new graph, of course, for the new motor, for the 2.4 liter motor. But what I find interesting about it is that, if this is in fact accurate, it shows a very flat torque curve across the RPM range, starting at about 3,000 RPM and going all the way up to redline around 7,000 RPM. And it looks really promising. It shows just a tiny little bit of dip that might be reminiscent of the torque dip that we saw in the previous generation BRZ. It seems like the dip is far less significant this time around, which would make sense. It's a 2.4 liter engine, so it's bigger in displacement, and so it's no surprise that they would be able to eliminate, for the most part, the torque dip that plagued the 2.0 liter engine. And we've kind of seen that in the launch event that Subaru held, where they took some of the journalists out for a ride around the track in the new BRZ. They have commented that the car accelerates stronger than before, and I'm sure that is due largely in part to the increased torque coming from the 2.4 liter engine, and that's evidenced by how flat you can see the curve on that chart. When we were looking under the hood at the new motor, one of the things that I had not noticed, but another sharp-eyed viewer had pointed out, was it looks like the sound tube is gone. The much maligned sound tube that ran between the engine and the passenger compartment seems to have been eliminated. With the previous generation BRZ, I think people kind of knocked that feature quite a bit, saying it was kind of artificial or fake to be piping in the sound from the engine compartment into the passenger compartment. Well, for better or worse, that feature is now gone, it seems, but I don't think that people will necessarily miss that. Taking another look at the exterior styling of the car, one thing I had talked about was how the back end of the car looked a lot like some other cars, like Hondas or Mercedes. One thing I didn't catch, but other people did seem to note, was how much it resembles, in some ways, the Hyundai Tiburon from the past. And now that I look at that, I do see the resemblance there. So that's something that you could point out as well, about how derivative the styling seems to be on some parts of this new BRZ. Turning back to the gauge cluster for a second, one thing that I thought was weird was the press release seems to indicate that the red line for the new 2.4 liter motor is at 7,000 RPM. And I found that kind of weird because when you look at the images of the gauge cluster, the tachometer shows a red line at 7,500 RPM. And I'm not sure why that is. Perhaps what they're showing is a pre-production model that they hadn't fixed that yet. or maybe the press release got it wrong. It's just not clear right now which one is correct. And so we're going to have to wait a little bit, I think, and see if they clear that up in a future release or with some more images of the digital cluster. What else is there to talk about? I guess if you're wondering when the car is going to be available, according to the press release, the car will go on sale in early fall of 2021. So we've still got about a year to go before this car hits the market. And we still don't know what the price is going to be. I imagine as we get closer to that launch date, Subaru will provide more information about the pricing. So we just have to sit tight for now and see what happens with that. I think everyone's still expecting that the price will be well under $30,000. So, there are still a few questions left unanswered. One question I have is, I'm just curious, and I don't think anyone that attended this launch event talked about this. I'm still curious as to how much involvement Toyota had with the development of this redesign of the BRZ. They haven't said anything. I think it's typical that they wouldn't, given that they're essentially, in terms of marketing, they tend to just pretend as if everything was being done by themselves. So I'm curious whether they're going to say that the development of this new BRZ was done entirely by Subaru, or whether it had the involvement of Toyota. In particular, I'm wondering whether or not Tada-san had a role in the redesign of the BRZ. I know that he was the chief engineer of the project, the joint project between Subaru and Toyota that ultimately became the BRZ and the Toyota 86. I am curious to see whether or not Tada-san had any input on this redesign, and maybe we'll see that come out when Toyota makes their announcement about the Toyota 86. At this point, we still haven't really heard anything from Toyota, so it's not even clear that Toyota is going to release a Toyota 86 version of this car, but we assume that they will. That's I think a safe assumption for now, unless they say anything otherwise. Okay, well, I think that's all that I wanted to cover in this quick update. Thank you, as always, for watching. I hope you guys stay safe, stay healthy, and take care. I'll see you next time.